All right, let's get into the topic of the day in college basketball. And boy, oh boy, is it a doozy. And by the way, it's been a doozy of an offseason here, an offseason unlike anything we've ever seen. We had the one-time transfer rule to start this bad boy off. We obviously had name, image, likeness come into effect here over the last couple days. We had the extra year of eligibility bring a ton of really talented players back to college basketball. And the latest little twist is this. While the one-time transfer rule has been in effect since whatever it was, early to mid-April, the one caveat is that players have to enter their names into the portal by the end of day, July 1st, 2020, that is this Thursday, to be eligible to play college basketball next year. Basically, or eligible to transfer and play right away is what I should say. Basically, the NCAA said, look, players, we will give you the one-time transfer rule, but at the same time, you got to do it by July 1st, because if you don't, we can't have players a day or two before the season or a day or two before school starts just deciding they want to transfer and expecting to get eligible at the next place right away. So the caveat is players have to have their name in the transfer portal over the last couple days, by the end of the day, July 1st. And over the last couple days, we have seen a new wave of players. All the players that have entered the NBA draft process, which will wrap up July 7th. By July 7th, players have to either announce they're staying or withdrawing. But the players that think they might come back to college but don't want to go back to where they were planning on going back to or where they came from have put their name in the portal. So over the last couple days, we saw Alabama's leading scorer, Jaden Shackelford, enter his name in the portal. I'm a little confused by that one. That's another conversation for another day. We have seen Dawson Garcia, McDonald's All-American, played at Marquette last year, entered his name in the transfer portal. Marcus Carr entered his name in the transfer portal. Now, those guys could still end up going pro, but they have put their names in the transfer portal just in case. And on Thursday afternoon, I would argue the single biggest player this entire offseason, when I say biggest, I mean metaphorically and literally, the single biggest player, the single biggest impact player who has his name in the draft, put his name also in the portal, and my goodness is this huge, as Kofi Cockburn, 6'11", I don't know what he is, 280, just a rock of a human being, massive, one of the best players in college basketball last year, did put his name in the transfer portal Thursday afternoon. Now, it's important to note a few things. One, he obviously played at Illinois last year. If he decides to come back to college basketball, that option is, of course, open. He also may just end up staying in the NBA draft. We do not know. Again, he has until next, I guess it would be, Wednesday or Thursday, July 7th, to officially pull his name out of the draft. But Kofi Cockburn is in the portal, and let me just tell you this. I've been covering college sports a long time. I think you can argue he is the single biggest player in the transfer portal era, the single most talented player in the transfer portal era to ever enter the transfer portal. That might sound like hyperbole, but let's just very quickly look at his resume. If you watched college basketball last year, you know how good he was. Second team All-American at Illinois. Remember, Illinois was one of the best teams in college basketball last year. They were good enough to win a national championship. He averaged almost 18 points, 9 rebounds per game for one of the best teams in college basketball. They won the Big Ten tournament. They could have won the Big Ten regular season. If they didn't run into the Loyola Ramblers in the second round in Sister Jean, that was a team that was good enough to win a national championship. But Kofi Cockburn played for them, and he was a star for them. He was their second best player. As I said, 18 points, 9.5 rebounds per game, second team All-American, first team All-Big Ten. So by any tangible measurement, he was one of the 10 best players in college basketball last year, and now he could be on the move. Naturally, I think most people would have a couple questions. The first one being, why is he coming back to college at all? If you're that good, why are you not going to the NBA? And I think the simple answer is anybody who has watched the guy play knows that, unfortunately, he is an incredibly talented player with a game that is from a different era. As I mentioned, 6'11", 7 feet, 280 pounds, whatever he is a monster. But he is a true low-post back-to-the-basket center, which I would say, by the way, still has major value in college basketball. But in the NBA, those guys are slowly getting phased out. We've watched the playoffs. It's a guard-driven league. We've seen what happens when you have big guys on the perimeter that can't defend. You just get pick and roll to death. I'm thinking about Rudy Gobert with the Utah Jazz, but there are plenty of other examples of it. And so basically, Kofi Cockburn, as great of a college basketball player as he is, it doesn't necessarily translate to what the NBA wants right now. And so part of it is his draft stock just isn't very good right now, even though he's a great college basketball player. The second question you're probably asking, well, why is he going to leave Illinois? He was a second-team All-American. They obviously know how to use him. He knows his teammates there. He knows his coaches there, all that stuff. And what I would also say is I think there's a couple logical reasons. The first one, I kind of think that he kind of understands that he came with Ayo Dosunmu. I know Ayo Dosunmu got there a year before him, but they were built last year to win a national championship. He came back last year. Ayo Dosunmu came back last year. And as soon as that happened, that was a team that was good enough to win a national championship. Ayo Dosunmu, first-team All-American. He won the Bob Cousy Award. I've had him on my podcast. Great kid. Love talking to Ayo Dosunmu. But when he leaves, I think Kofi kind of looks at it and says, it's never going to get better at Illinois than it did last year. My main guy, my All-American point guard, he's gone. And as good as the other pieces are, shout out Andre Curbelo. He's a very talented player. It's not going to be the same. I need to go ahead and consider another option as it pertains to college. I would also mention Illinois actually recruited a player to replace Kofi Cockburn, not thinking there was any chance he could come back to college. And they signed a guy named Omar Payne, who played at Florida over the last couple of years to kind of fill that center spot. Illinois, good team, but it's going to be a different team. A lot of the guys that he had so much success with are not coming back, most notably Ayo Dosunmu. They signed a guy to replace him. And then, oh, by the way, there is one other reason why he would consider leaving, and that's because the guy that recruited him, Orlando Antigua, left this offseason to go to the University of Kentucky. As a matter of fact, and if you follow my work, you probably already know, Illinois' top two assistants, Chin Coleman, Chicago guy, deep roots, great recruiter, was the main guy, I believe, that got Ayo Dosunmu to Illinois, Adam Miller to Illinois, guys like that. Chin Coleman decides to go to Kentucky. Orlando Antigua decides to go to Kentucky. And Orlando Antigua was the guy who recruited Kofi Cockburn out of New York. They're both New York guys. And so Kofi Cockburn ends up at Illinois, and the guy that brought him there is no longer there. That, of course, also leads to a very important follow-up. Where is Kofi Cockburn going to end up next? And, of course, as soon as he hit the portal, the immediate speculation is, well, it's going to be Kentucky. It's got to be Kentucky. And I'll be honest, when I first saw it, I said, okay, I get the Orlando Antigua, the parallel there. I get why you would make that connection, but Kentucky's got a lot of big guys already. They have 6 scholarship players. Oscar Tshiebwe down low is basically 80% of Kofi Cockburn, just a big monster down low. He's about 6'8", 6'9", whatever he is, a little bit smaller than Kofi Cockburn. You have Keon Brooks, who is developing an outside game but isn't there yet. You have Lance Ware, who's a 4. You have Damian Collins, Bryce Hopkins, who are freshmen, Jacob Toppin, who's kind of a wing. But the front court is loaded. It doesn't make sense to consider Kentucky. But then I started texting people in college basketball. And as I just tweeted out in the middle of the evening here on whatever it is, Thursday afternoon, Thursday evening, I said, look, I'm not telling you Kofi is definitively going to Kentucky, but what I am telling you is every single person that I texted a bunch of high major coaches, a bunch of coaches that recruit regularly in the transfer portal, and they all seem to think like, look, we're going to give him a call. We're going to try to get him. But I don't feel very good that he's going anywhere other than Kentucky. Every single person that I reached out to said, like, we think he's going to Kentucky. He's on the record saying the reason he went to Illinois was because of Orlando Antigua, and now Orlando Antigua's at Kentucky. We have to put 2 and 2 together. And so it is a fascinating conversation. It is a fascinating, and to be clear, and I want to make this abundantly clear because I put out a tweet, it's gotten some traction. I am not saying it's 100% a done deal. I am not saying it's definitely going to happen. I'm not saying that Kentucky is even necessarily going to recruit him. I think they will. I am just saying that when I talk to people in college basketball, they're like, well, how else could it be anyone other than Kentucky? And that is the buzz that I'm hearing right now. And again, I think you also have to consider the possibility that, oh, by the way, he might just consider staying in the NBA draft and going pro, but it does seem like he's at least considering other college options. Now, as far as Kentucky's concerned, really quick, I'll just say this. If they get Kofi Cockburn, man, it's really hard to pick anyone other than Kentucky to, at the top of the polls. Now, I have them at about, I think, 6 or 7 right now. I would probably move them up a spot or 2. I would have to move Alabama down a spot after the Jaden Shackelford news of the last couple days. But when I look at Kentucky, I already think they're about the 6th, 7th best team in the country. But you add Kofi Cockburn to that team? Oh, my goodness. You could argue maybe UCLA's better, maybe Gonzaga's better. But Kofi Cockburn versus Chet Holmgren. No disrespect. I'm taking Kofi Cockburn every time. And so if Kentucky somehow pulls this off, I mean, number one, number two in the I mean, how can you put them below 2-3 in the country? I know Villanova returns a lot, but Kofi Cockburn, 18-9 in the Big Ten last year. So this is going to be fascinating to watch. And the only other thing I would say really quick on this Kofi Cockburn thing is this. I think this is one of the first signs of the impact of name, image, likeness. And what I mean by that is that if you look at Kofi Cockburn, if you look at his exact situation, he is the exact player that name, image, likeness should benefit, right? Think about it. This is a guy, fringe second-round pick, might not get drafted at all. If he gets drafted, he's probably going to the G League, and I don't claim to know how two-way contracts work and how much money you're making, but you're probably only making a couple $100,000. Now you come back to college, you get to play on a huge stage. You don't have to go to Sioux Falls or, Ogden, Utah. You get to make some money. Now, how much money? I don't know, but you start talking about Cameo. You start talking about having a summer camp before. The money would pile up really quick, and so I think this is an effect of whether it is Kentucky, whether it is somebody else, is that I think name, image, likeness is a big reason why this guy is coming back to college basketball. Fascinating to watch. I'm just telling you, everybody that I talked to as of about 6:30 Pacific or 6:30 Eastern time on Thursday, thinks this guy is going to Kentucky. I'm not saying it's a done deal, but my goodness, Kofi Cockburn, what a monster, could potentially be headed to Kentucky, or he could be potentially coming back to college basketball. But as I said, biggest name in the transfer portal that I have seen not only this year but in previous years. By the way, if you did like this video, do me a quick favor. Go ahead, subscribe to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube channel. Also subscribe to the Aaron Torres Podcast. Also, make sure to follow me on Twitter at Aaron_Torres. Follow me on Instagram at Aaron Torres Pod.